Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of Providend's Money Wisdom Podcast. I'm your host, Isaac, Client Advisor at Providend. Joining me today is Christopher Tan, Founder and CEO of Providend. Hi Chris, great to see you back.
Hi Isaac, it's good to be back, especially after I've gone away for the last 2 weeks or so. It's good to be back in Singapore.
You were in Japan for the past 2 weeks, so
Yeah,
how
man.
was your trip?
It was great. Of course, when you go for holidays, you can get a bit tired. It can get a bit tiring, but the weather was great. The minute I stepped out of the plane last night, I was like, wow, Singapore is really, really hot and humid. And I heard that this week is not that bad already because there were showers and all that, but wow. It's always good to be back in office.
Yeah, it's good to hear. Actually, when I was in Japan a month ago, it was still really hot. It was like 30 plus degrees every day. So at least you got to enjoy better weather.
Yeah, because this period is actually autumn. And so the weather in Tokyo is like 23, 24 degrees. But I spend most of my time in Hokkaido, which is about 13 to 17 degrees. So it was great. It was really, really nice. But wow, Singapore is really double-edged, man. Hot and humid. But like I say, it's always good to be back in office.
Yeah. So before you went to Japan, you wrote this article, which we'll be discussing today, titled, for the Business Time, titled ILPs, the welcome bonus that cost you more than you think, right? So in hindsight, do you feel like, okay, maybe you should have written this article after
the Japan trip.
After the Japan trip instead?
Yeah, man. This article cost me more of my space than I thought. Yes, but honestly, I didn't really expect that kind of response. I wrote that article primarily because there was a write-up published on the Straits Times about the sale of ILP that has gone up over the past few years, but the complaints have gone up as well. And in a way, it was quite nice to hear the CEO of FEDRAC talks about it and talk about the need to do something about it. And we have been talking about ILPs for the longest time. And I felt that I just wanted to share my view. And hopefully, with that combined effort, hopefully more consumers will get to know about ILPs and then they can make a decision for themselves if the ILP is suitable, the ILPs are suitable for them. So actually, that's the reason why I wrote about it before I went to Japan. Of course, not expecting the brickbats that I got.
Yeah, the article was controversial to say the least, and especially among financial advisors, right? So how do you feel about this, and were you expecting it to be like that?
Actually, I don't know why people say it's controversial. I never meant it to be a controversial piece. I thought it was quite neutral. Neutral in a sense whereby I didn't put anyone down. I didn't suggest that advisors are selling it because of commissions. I didn't put the advisory industry down. I was just stating a fact because in that particular article written by the Straits Times journalist, King, it talks about ILP being a product that can be complex to understand. And it is a complex product. And so in the article that I wrote for the Business Times, there were actually just 2 themes. The first one is about why I think that the ILP can be quite complicated. It is not enough just to look at the welcome bonus. You need to look at it, how it stacks up after you take into consideration the fees and the lock-in period, right? And so I was trying to explain in my article to show that actually it's quite complex. Of course, inevitably, the issue of cost, the issue of fees have to be spoken, and we can talk about that later. But the second theme is really about why at Providend we don't see ILP being part of our portfolio, why we don't think that it makes sense at all to have an ILP in your investment portfolio. And that was about it. It was sharing why the ILP is a complex product, why we don't use it. So I was actually quite shocked, not surprised. I was actually quite shocked with the industry response, and I really got whacked, man. There were at least, I think, 10 advisors and even the association, even the Insurance and Financial Practitioner Association wrote about it. So yes, I was quite taken aback with that kind of response.
Yeah, but I think also we try not to focus too much on the negative. There's also a lot of positive support for you as well.
Yeah, I mean, thanks Isaac for saying that, because like 20 years ago when I started writing about ILPs and I wrote about whole life and versus term, sadly I would say that I always get whacked by the industry, but the consumers are all very grateful. So I got a lot of encouragement from readers. They either text me personally, they emailed me, or they put on social media. It's sad because why is it that way? I mean, surely the industry can see that, and surely we should begin to ask ourselves, why is it that when I say something like this, actually the consumers are all grateful that it's being said, but only the advisors are unhappy? I think this should be a point of reflection. Why is it like that?
Right. I think before we move on with the episode, maybe you can just share with our listeners and our viewers, about the research that you published, right, to the Business Time, at least so that our listeners who didn't get to read the article yet can understand a bit of context of this article.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's not my research, right? To be fair, this was part of the research done by our solutions team 2 years ago. And the research basically shows that, yes, the welcome bonus of an ILP can be seemingly attractive, but after taking into consideration the fees, the policy fees and the management fees and all that, your bonus actually can be, the welcome bonus may be eaten away, right? And if you take into consideration the fund management fees over a long period of time, the fees are actually not that cheap. So I thought the solutions team did a great job doing that research 2 years ago. We did an article in November of 2023. If you're interested, you can search it up on our website. It has got to do with ILP, to show the annualized fees after taking into consideration the bonuses as well as the fees. But like I said, the BT article that I wrote recently wasn't so much to highlight the fees, but to show that it takes a bit of work, I mean, it took our solutions team quite a bit of work to derive the actual annualized fee of an ILP. I don't expect the consumers to be able to do that. And that's why I say it is actually quite a complicated structure.
Yeah. When it comes to welcome bonus, they can tell you that they can give you 100%, 300%, 500%. But at the end of the day, is what matters to the consumer, I feel, is that after X number of years, what do I get back, assuming the investment even performs at what we expect.
That's right. I mean, if you have not read the article, please read it, okay? Because it's easier to read the article than for us to explain it here. But it's just an example. Although the numbers, I got it actually from real policies. I didn't make up those numbers, right? I got it from a real policy on how your welcome bonus can be eaten up by the ongoing policy fee. And so whilst the initial welcome bonus looked really attractive, I think you need to look beyond the welcome bonus. You need to look beyond even the loyalty bonus, the ongoing loyalty bonus that you will get, and then understand the actual fees that you are paying on an annual basis. I think that's something that not just the consumer need to understand. I think as advisors, if we are going to use ILP, we really need to explain that to the clients.
Right. Despite this, and I think you are not the, of course, in recent times, your article is the one that is stirring all the conversations. But ILPs have, when we go online, it's not the most popular product, right? Many people are also, maybe they had bad experiences with it, they shared it with online. But despite this, why do you think that ILPs continue to still be so popular in Singapore, right? Earlier in the podcast episode, you mentioned that what prompted you to write this article is because of record sales of ILPs, of course leading to record levels of complaints as well. But why do you think that ILPs is still so, or rather why do so many people still buy ILPs? And do you feel that it's because of marketing, lack of financial literacy, or something else?
I think it's a combination of everything. So ILP started in the 90s when I first joined the industry, and to a tied agent, ILP is probably the only investment product that we can sell, because the tied agency, they cannot sell pure unit trust. And ILP allows them to actually recommend an investment product. And in our industry, they always say that products are being sold, not bought. And with a very strong sales force in the industry, obviously this particular product is being pushed down to the clients. And even if you are not a tied agent from the insurer and you are a FA rep, and you can actually have access to pure unit trust, ILPs in a way is a packaged product. It is a product, or it is a portfolio management solution packaged in a product. And when you sell it to the client, you don't have to worry about the rebalancing. You don't have to worry about adjusting allocation to funds, whether from time to time you monitor the performance of the fund and you want to change the fund, and put something else into that portfolio. You don't have to do that because it's all done for you in that one package called the ILP. So from the FA rep standpoint, if you are a self-employed FA rep, and most of the financial advisors in Singapore are self-employed FA rep, and you don't have an investment committee to rely on, an investment team that is watching the performance of the portfolios all the time and occasionally making changes, the ILP is easy for you. You just sell it as a package. So because of that, the ILPs are being sold to the consumers. And of course, from the consumer standpoint, although financial literacy has been improving, but I think investment literacy and financial literacy, I think we still have a long way to go before consumers are financially a lot more savvy. And so to really understand the structure of the ILP, like I said, is not easy. And oftentimes, the ILP allows for misselling to happen, which was what some of the detractors said about it themselves. I didn't say that they were misselling, but a lot of the commentators said that it's not the product, it's the practice, right? It's misselling. But in a way, because the ILP is complex, it allows misselling. It allows sincere misselling, if there's such a word, because sometimes even advisors don't understand the structure, right? And consumers, they are easily being attracted by the high welcome bonus and they buy it, right? So I think this is the situation that has caused ILPs sale to balloon. But yet at the same time, the experience, like you said, you go online. Of course, there are some consumers, they may have good experiences in the short term, but many of the investors of ILP over the long term, they have not a lot of good things to be said. And so again, I'm sorry, but I got to bring this to the point that I said earlier. I think we need to reflect why investors are feeling that way. Why is it that the industry is always saying this product is good, but yet the investors don't feel the same? I think this is a point for us to reflect so that we can bridge the gap.
Right. And you raised up of one of the main things that the commentators online say is that the issue is misselling, right? I think to expand on that, they always argue that it's regulatory bodies like MAS permit the sale of ILPs, and the real challenge really lies in ensuring that when it is sold, there's proper advice given, there's transparency and suitability, and we should not dismiss the product entirely. So what do you think about this counter argument, I would say?
I think MAS will never agree to say that because they allow the registration of a certain product, they guarantee the performance. No MAS officer will say that. So I think it's a weak argument to say that because it is MAS approved, therefore the product is okay. If that's the case, during the GFC, a mini bond crisis would happen. If you remember the mini bond crisis, it is a structure underlying it, collateral debt obligation, CDOs. If you understand the CDOs today, I cannot say that that product is a good product for investor. So I cannot agree, Isaac. I find that it is quite weak to say that all products are good, is how to use it. There surely must be certain products that are not as good. and so complicated that maybe it is not to be bought by retail investors. And the truth of the matter is most retail investors, most of the buyers of ILPs are retail investors, the mass market that buys it. So firstly, I cannot agree with that MAS regulated product means it's good and it's of high quality. May not be the case. Secondly, it is a product, as I've mentioned, that is complex enough to allow for misselling, sincere misselling even. Some years back, I think I've shared this story before. I have got an insurance advisor who came to me. That was during COVID, and this insurance advisor told me that she sincerely believed that the ILPs are good for the clients, and she sold it and she bought it herself. She wasn't dishonest. She bought it herself, only to realize that when she is near her retirement, that product isn't giving her the return that she needs. So you see, there could be sincere mis-selling or sincere bad selling because the product is complicated, even sometimes for advisors to understand. Those people who sold the mini bonds during the GFC days, can I say that they all sold it with malice? No, I'm sure not. Right? But the product was so complicated. I couldn't understand the CDO in 2009, 2010. And because we couldn't understand it, we didn't sell anything related to CDOs, thankfully for us. Right? So how much must retail consumers, retail investors suffer because we get our practice right? How much must the investors lose money before advisors are trained how to explain ILPs properly? Why can't we just use this very simple product and do the same job, right? That advisors can understand easily and explain it easily, right? And there are so many out there. Why do we have to resort to using a product that's not easy to understand, not exactly cheap? Yeah, so I saw those comments and I don't even know how to respond actually. I don't think the investors should pay a price for our inability. I think that applies to all professionals. I don't think the patients should pay a price for the doctor's incompetence. Yes, we have some cases whereby they are incompetent. Most times, the experience with the medical profession has been good. And if the patients should not pay a price for the doctor's incompetence, then why should our clients pay a price for our incompetence and our bad ethics? Right? Yeah, so I can't buy the argument.
Right. Hi listeners, thank you for your ongoing support. Some long-time listeners might know that the inspiration behind this entire podcast was our CEO, Chris's Money Wisdom book. We're proud to announce that we have launched our second edition of the book titled Money Wisdom Part 2, More Simple Truths for Financial Wellness. If you're interested in getting your very own copy, please check out the link in the show notes for more information. Thank you, and let's get back to the episode. But as another argument to say that, if you're competent enough to understand the product, you can actually use it for, it has a strategic role in holistic planning, right? So some say that, ILPs support estate planning, tax efficiency, for high net worth even, and it makes them a valuable tool in terms of long-term wealth strategies, right? So what do you have to say, for that?
Yeah, so when I read those comments, it suddenly dawned upon me that we were talking about different things, right? So most of those comments come from a point of using the ILP as a package bundled solutions to solve the different problems the clients have for accumulation, for protection, for legacy, for tax planning, all packaged in one product. But the problem with a packaged product is that there will always be trade-offs. It will never be a perfect solution to your problem. And a bundled product, a structure usually have layers of fees. That's usually the case. So when I wrote the article explaining why as a company, Providend, all these years we have not used ILPs is because we look at an ILP as a standalone product, as an ingredient, and whether this ingredient is suitable to be part of our total solution. We don't, our solutions, we don't package it, we don't bundle. We try and use all solutions available out there and customize a solution for the client. I mean, there are tax solutions that you don't have to package a product to solve it. There are estate planning and legacy solutions using legal instrument whereby you can actually efficiently solve a problem without having to package it in a product. When it comes to protection, there are enough plans, protection plans out there that can solve problems. So we look at the different ingredients of different products and then we customize it into the plan for efficiency and effectiveness. And that's why we don't use ILP, because it's a packaged product. And one of the things I've described or said in the article is that we don't use ILP for investment because it's so difficult to rebalance a portfolio when you use an ILP, because it's sitting on the insurance platform and the investment is sitting on the investment platform. How do you rebalance? And so, like I said, it suddenly dawned upon me that we are speaking about different things. The advisors who were commenting were looking at ILP as a packaged solution for all the problems. I was talking about using ILP as one of the instruments as part of our customized solutions. And that's why I said it's not suitable. So I don't even know how to reply those comments, because if you have not been doing fund management, if you have not been producing customized solution, I will never be clear enough for you. And you will always see ILP as a suitable instrument in the toolkit of wealth management, but I don't think it is a suitable instrument in the toolkit of investment management. So that's my thought on this matter.
Right. Thanks for sharing. I think I just want to clarify one part about rebalancing, because I'm sure some will be listening and say, hey, that's not true. I can rebalance my ILP. I think what Chris meant is that you can rebalance within the policy itself, but let's say you have most of your net worth in an ILP and something happened. For example, you may have been laid off, you might need some liquidity now, and if it's still within the penalty period, right? That's where it's not easy to rebalance your overall portfolio as a whole. Not to say that we can't rebalance within the policy.
Yeah, I think that's a
itself.
good point. Also, for example, most investors, if you are well advised, you would have different instruments. You may hold a single name bonds, you may hold single name equities, you may buy a pure unit trust, you may have an ETF, and then you have an ILP. Can you see the problem? Because all these investment instruments are sitting on the investment platform and your ILP is sitting on the insurance side. How do you rebalance your portfolio? Right? It's tough, operationally tough. And especially if you have got 1,000 clients. How are you going to do that for 1,000 clients? Right? And by the time you do it, the market might have moved already. So, I don't know how to better explain this, but I realize that we are really speaking different wavelength. Because of the way we are looking at the product as part of the solutions for the clients.
Right. Another argument I saw is that, you mentioned that, there are a lot more efficient instruments that you can use, to mitigate some of the concerns that some people might have, right, regarding tax efficiency, so on and so forth. But not, many retail investors have access to an advisor that can help them with that. So the counter argument is that, with an ILP, it can solve all of these for me. So what do you have to say about that?
Would you want to buy a product that is not so good for you just because you have no access to good advice?
Probably not.
I find that to be startling. right? Because the retail investors have no access to all, they don't have as much access to good advisors as the wealthier ones. And the solution to that is you buy a product that's not so good. It's a double whammy, right? First, you don't get good advice, and then secondly, you buy a product that may not be not so good, right? And that is why, in a separate interview and the different videos that I've done, I said that for most men in the street, perhaps they shouldn't be investing in Singapore, right? Just focus on the 3 C's, right? Cash flow management, coverage management, and CPF. And if CPF is not enough, well, you can have a private annuity. And doing that alone without taking on market risk should be able to give you a decent lifestyle. Of course, for those of you who are savvy, I have seen critics of what I said as well for that particular thinking. Some critics say, no, but if you don't invest, you cannot grow wealth. I totally agree, right? Investing is definitely the way if you want to grow your wealth. But if you have no access to good advice and you don't want to buy a less suitable product, then you are likely to be better off not investing than to invest and then lose money, right? Yeah, so I don't know what to say to that comment, Isaac, about people who have no access to good advisors, and because of that, therefore, buying an ILP which may not be so suitable is the solution. I can't see the logic behind.
Right. So I'm just going through my list of all the different counter arguments. There's so many.
Yeah.
So maybe I'll just go for one last one that is quite common. Is that ILPs have been evolving, right? So you mentioned earlier that ILPs started, around the time when you started in the industry. Since then, we call them traditional ILPs, right? It has evolved to now what we call 101 ILPs, right? And now ILPs come in various structures, designed with modern versions, offering a lot other features that differ significantly from past policies. So, do you think that did your article account for this, and how should we think about it?
Kudos to the insurance company for evolving or manufacturing ILPs that we see today. I mean, it's definitely a great improvement from the ILPs that we have seen in the 90s. I mean, not only nowadays, the ILPs have access to more funds. Even some of them are index funds. And now we have ILPs that are 100%, your premiums are invested. We have ILPs that have very little protection because that's what people want to do when they want to invest, right? They don't want a large part of their premiums to go into paying for insurance charge. So I give credit to the insurance companies for the ongoing process, that relentless process of trying to improve the ILPs. And so, yes, if the ILP evolves to a point whereby Providend find that it is going to be useful, we will use it. I'm not fighting the industry for fighting I'm not fighting the industry. I'm just saying why we don't use it. If one day the ILP evolves to a point whereby we can use it meaningfully, we will use it for our clients. So why should I not? I mean, we have a license to be able to distribute ILP. We can sell ILP if we want to sell ILP, right? So it's no reason for me. It doesn't hurt me to use ILP if I find it useful. And the only reason why we don't use it is because we don't find it useful. But if the ILPs evolve to a point whereby, yes, is usable for us now in our portfolio, we'll use it. It's just that the article is written based on what we see now. Until today, we are not convinced that it's useful for our portfolios.
Yeah, and we will continue to look out, for developments in that space. And like you mentioned, right, it's not that we are adverse to, as long as it's ILP, we don't want it. I mean, for us, we always look at it independently, and then we just have provide an honest opinion about whether it's suitable or not. That's all.
Yeah, I mean, our portfolios are. We don't have a lot of different instruments, right? And it's not because we can only use a few. It is because from the so many that are available for us in Singapore, we are open architecture. I mean, we have access to all sorts of instruments that are out there. Why is it that we only use that few? Because we only find that few to be useful for our clients. to be able to deliver enough returns to enable their ikigai goals. I don't have to add complexity to a portfolio just to make the portfolio look complicated, right? And try and impress clients that we have all access to all these instruments. We use instruments that are necessary. And so if ILP one day becomes useful for us, we'll use it.
Right. Okay, so I think that's enough in terms of the counter arguments. Of course, there's so many, but of course, I'm sure you have the opportunity to address them somewhere along in the future, right? But Chris, you have been vocal about ILPs for over 2 decades already. What has kept you committed to this stance, and even when it comes with pushback from the industry, right? I remember a story that you shared with us, how in the earlier years of Providend, when you were talking about ILPs, your son was receiving death threats regarding from whoever, right? So what has kept you committed to this stance to speak up when it's may not seem so easy?
Yeah, it's no fun, Isaac, to be in a place whereby your own fellow colleagues in a space, they don't like you. You have no friends, you go for conferences, especially in the earlier days, and no one come and shake your hand, they ignore you, they give you a dirty look. It's no fun. It's no fun to say something and then you immediately you get whacked in various forms. I've seen TikTok videos produced on me, on the article, on LinkedIn, on Facebook. It is no fun. I thought after 20 over years, almost 30 years, I would have gotten used to it. But, I cannot help but feel emotionally sad when I see another comment. It drains my energy. And you're right, I should have done it after Japan, because when I'm in Japan, I'm still seeing some of those and it drains me. I think for us, it's just about speaking the truth, what we think about a certain instrument. But I hope the industry realized that my posture has changed. 20 years ago, I might have been more harsh with my words. Not only I will speak about the truth of how we feel about a certain product, but we may inevitably put down the industry as well. But I have not done that for a long time. I have not put down the industry. I'm just stating what is good for the clients. And so I think that's not just me, but it's all of you in the team. All of you have stayed committed to making sure that whatever you speak to the client is the absolute truth. Because that's what Providend stands for. It's in our corporate purpose. Our corporate purpose is part of our culture. Providend exists to give honest, independent, and competent advice to our clients. And so that's what we will say, and we will just say it the way we think is right without putting anyone down. And if it helps the consumers, that's great. If it helps the industry, that's great. One of the commentator, and it's not an advisor, this guy is from just a reader of one of the posts, and then he said this, which I appreciate him very much. He said that at least it sparks conversation. Whatever I've shared, and then because of the conversation between the advisors and me, it sparks conversation. It pushes people to find out more. It pushes for more transparency. So I think the process is a good process. And most importantly, we don't cancel each other out. We continue that conversation with each other.
Right. Actually, I've been on the online forums, right? Like the Singapore FI subreddit, and every day, without fail, there will be someone that posts something like, "Oh, I just bought this ILP. What should I do?" And the answer is always the same, right? From commenters, So, for someone who is listening to this video or listening to this podcast or this on YouTube, if they have currently just bought an ILP or they are holding on to an ILP that they have bought for a few years already, what would you advise them to consider before making any decisions?
Yeah, I just saw on today's Singapore FI, on Reddit that somebody said, I can't remember whether it's should I cancel my ILP or
it's
I've
all
just
the
terminated my
time,
ILP. Yeah, so please don't. Now, I am not advocating for that because sometimes you pay huge penalty for terminating your ILPs early, right? I would say go and speak to a trusted advisor if you have, right? I hesitated for a while because we just spent quite a bit of time talking about access to advisors. But I don't know what else to tell you, but please go and get a second opinion. Don't just terminate your ILPs like that because you may lose a lot of money, right? That's first thing. The second thing is just because you have a good experience with ILP, especially in the short term, does not mean that this instrument is suitable for you, because the more important question in investing is not the short term. It is whether the approach in managing the investment in the long term will yield you good results. Because investment goes up and down, right? I mean, there's no investment that's a straight line up. They always go up and down, right? And we don't have to worry about the down as long as we have confidence that in the long term, because of the approach, it makes sense for you to get the long-term return, right? Now, in the short term, you get good returns, but if the approach is not going to work in the long term, then it doesn't mean that you should keep the ILP either, right? So, but as a retail investor, you may not have the ability to be able to assess that. And so find someone competent to be able to give you a second opinion and assess what you should do. And obviously, you shouldn't go back to the advisor who sold you the ILP because he's not going to tell you that it's not suitable, right? But find a trusted advisor. And there are. Providend, we are not the only advisory company that talk about no, ILP is not suitable. The good thing is I'm seeing more individual advisors coming up to say they agree, right? So there are advisors whom are technically competent. Find these people, take your time, find these people, and have a second opinion before you decide what you should do.
Right. And now that you have addressed the consumers, right, finally, given the controversy, is there anything you'd like to say to your critics?
I think, and I've said this many times already, and I don't want to sound like a broken recorder, and I don't want to be like sitting on a moral high or standing on a moral high ground all the time, sitting on a horse. But I hope we realize that our advice matters to the client for the long term. If you are strongly believing in ILP, you need to be very sure that your belief is evidence-based. Don't just listen to whoever that tells you that is good. Don't just depend on your managers who's training you, because you are accountable to your own clients, right? So if you have a strong conviction and you believe, don't be angry with me, because you're accountable to your own clients. If you're fighting me for fighting's sake, ultimately you face your clients. And you are responsible to your clients' aspiration, their dreams for their families, their dreams for their children in 10, 15, 20 years' time. You really don't want to recommend something to them that you are not really very sure of that is good. And think about it. Why are we talking about it for the last 20 years? And it is not as if I cannot sell ILP. I can, but I choose not to. We choose not to. Why is it that there's so much unhappiness amongst the investors of ILP? Think about that. And then when you are finally convinced that, well, if ILP is really good and you are convicted, then go for it. Yes, I'm not going to stop you, because ultimately you are accountable to your clients. I'm not accountable to the advice. I'm not accountable to your clients for the advice that you give, right? Be open about these issues as we are. And like I said, Isaac, if we are convinced that one day ILPs are actually good for our portfolios, we'll use it. And we'll openly say that we are not going to use ILP because we think it's good. We are open about this. But don't be just close to it because Christopher says so, Providence says so, you're not happy with what I say. And the last thing I'll say, because somebody told me this, because they said maybe they're unhappy because they have sold plenty of ILPs to their clients. They cannot backtrack. In the first 3 years when I was an insurance advisor, I sold plenty of ILPs. Of course, when I started talking about why we don't believe in ILPs in 2004, I've got clients who are angry with me. I've got a client who came to me and she said, last time you said it's good, now you tell me no good. I think that client lost her trust in me. But I cannot continue to do something that I now believe that may not be suitable just because I've done it for 3 years. We just have to take the hit and say, we are sorry. If you allow me to make it right, I will make it right again. I think that is the correct way forward, rather than to say, no, I can't turn back anymore because I've sold plenty to my clients. Of course, it takes courage to do that, and I am going to encourage. The word encourage, N is put lah. I want to put courage in you to do so. If you truly believe that, well, I think there are better instruments, but you've sold plenty, I think your client will appreciate you a lot more if you go to them and say, I changed my mind. I think I have a better solution for you. Allow me to do it. And you win more trust. You will do better in your business and your practice.
Right. That really resonated with me because I also started my career in the bank. Didn't know better, but now I know better. That's why I'm here. Okay. So that's all the time that we have today. Thank you so much once again, Chris, for your time.
Thanks, Isaac.
I understand you are really tired. You just touched down from Japan yesterday.
Yeah, I just did a fireside chat this morning.
Yeah. And then this podcast. Okay, so to all our listeners, I hope you enjoyed this longer than usual episode. If you like this episode, please don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. As always, thank you all for watching and listening, and I'll see you all in the next episode. All analysis, views or opinions from interviews, recommendations and other information broadcasted, podcasted or published herein are provided for general information purposes only. Information expressed does not take into account any specific situation, particular needs or objectives, and should not be construed as specific advice or a recommendation. Information has been obtained from sources that are deemed to be reliable, but their accuracy and completeness cannot be guaranteed. Always consult with a qualified investment, legal or tax professional before taking any action. Providend Limited does not accept any liability for any loss whatsoever arising from any use of the information broadcasted or published herein. All contents and information contained herein may not be copied or reproduced in whole or in part by any means without prior written consent of Providend Limited.